In this mystical dream, God is trying to tell St. John Bosco to send his Salesians to a foreign land, specifically Patagonia, a region that very few had explored. The Miracles and Prophecies of St. John Bosco, a project of America Needs Fatima. I'm your host, Matthew Miller. Subscribe for new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The following dream made Don Bosco decide on his missionary apostolate in Patagonia, which is a region at the southern end of South America that spans both Argentina and Chile. But it actually took a couple of years to understand where he was geographically in the dream because he didn't recognize the land or the people there. He first narrated it in March 1876 to Pope Pius IX. Later, he told it privately to a few Salesians. Once, while Father Barbaris was conversing with Don Bosco in the library, the latter told him the dream as they paced back and forth. Father Barbaris didn't disclose that he had already heard it from Father Bodrato, not only because he was delighted to hear it again from Don Bosco's own lips, but because, in retelling his dreams, Don Bosco would add new and interesting details. The saint said, "I seemed to be in a wild region I had never before seen, an immense, unfilled plain, unbroken by hills or mountains, except at the farthest end, where I could see the outline of jagged mountains. Throngs of naked, dark-skinned, fierce-looking, long-haired men of exceptional height and build swarmed all over this plain. Their only garments were hide strung across their shoulders. Their weapons were long spears and slings. These throngs, scattered about, presented varied sights to the spectator. Some men were hunting, others were carrying bloodied chunks of meat at spear point, still others were fighting among themselves or with European soldiers. I shuddered at the sight of corpses lying all over the ground. Just then, many people came into sight at the far end of the plain. Their clothing and demeanor told me that they were missionaries of various orders who had come to preach the Christian faith to these barbarians. I stared intently at them, but could recognize no one. They strode directly to those savages, but the latter immediately overwhelmed them with fiendish fury and hatred, killing them, ripping them apart, hacking them into pieces, and brandishing chunks of their flesh on the barbs of their long spears. Now and then, fighting broke out again among the savages or against neighboring tribes. After witnessing this horrible bloodshed, I said to myself, how can one convert so brutal a people? Then I saw a small band of other missionaries, led by a number of young boys. They were advancing cheerfully toward those savages. I feared for them, thinking they are walking to their death. I went to meet them. They were clerics and priests. When I looked closely at them, I recognized them as our own Salesians. I personally knew only those in front, but I could see that the others too were Salesians. "How can this be?" I exclaimed. I didn't want them to advance any further because I feared that soon their fate would be that of the former missionaries. I was about to force them back when I saw that the barbarians seemed pleased by their arrival. Lowering their spears, they warmly welcomed them. In utter amazement, I said to myself, well, let's see how things will turn out. I saw that our missionaries mingled with them and taught them, and they docilely listened and learned quickly. They readily accepted the missionaries' admonitions and put them into practice. As I stood watching, I noticed that the missionaries were reciting the Rosary as they advanced, and that the savages, closing in from all sides, made way for them and joined in the prayers. After a while, our Salesians moved into the center of the throng and knelt. Encircling them, the barbarians also knelt, laying their weapons at the missionaries' feet. Then a missionary intoned, "Praise Mary, ye faithful tongues," and as with one voice, the song swelled in such unison and power that I awoke, partly frightened. I had this same dream 4 or 5 years ago, and it sharply impressed me because I took it as a heavenly sign. Though I didn't thoroughly grasp its specific meaning, I understood that it referred to the foreign missions, which even at that time were one of my most fervent aspirations. Don Bosco wasn't sure where he was in the dream and was greatly confused as to where he should send his Salesians. He said, "At first I thought they were Ethiopians. But after questioning people who knew those regions and reading books on the subject, I abandoned the thought. Then I thought of Hong Kong. But after some research, I realized that my dream resembled neither the land nor its inhabitants. Then on a visit of Bishop Matthew Quinn of Sydney, I began to think of Australia. I asked the bishop about the Aborigines and their disposition, but his description didn't fit what I had seen. Yet, so vividly and deeply had that dream impressed me that I couldn't ignore it. Past experiences had taught me that whatever I saw would come true. Little by little, Australia gave way in my mind to the island of Mangalore, India. I read books, spoke with English missionaries who had come from those regions, and through a curious mistake of mine and certain comparisons, I became convinced that my dream concerned either India or Australia. In fact, I felt a renewed interest in the whole thing. For the next 4 years, I talked practically of nothing but those countries. I even got to the point where I had 2 of my Salesians start studying English in earnest. But at last, in 1874, the Argentine consul who had met me at Varese and had observed our spirit spoke about us to the Archbishop of Buenos Aires and to many priests. They in turn became quite enthused about us and expressed the wish for Salesian schools in their archdiocese. In fact, the Archbishop's secretary wrote to me stating that the Argentinians would be delighted to welcome us there. At the same time, a letter came from Father Cacciarelli, pastor at San Nicolas de los Arroyos, a day's journey by boat from Buenos Aires. This priest informed me that he had heard of us from the Argentine consul and that, of his own initiative, he was quite willing to leave his parish and town to us and carry out his priestly ministry elsewhere. He told me that the city had built a boarding school and that the municipal officials were ready, at his suggestion, to give it to us, should we be willing to accept it. The letters astounded me. I quickly got geography books about South America and read them attentively. The text and illustrations perfectly described the natives I had seen in my dream and the region where they lived, Patagonia, that vast southern plain of the Argentine Republic. After gathering a lot more information and receiving detailed explanations, I put aside any doubts. All matched perfectly with my dream. From then on, I knew precisely where I was to direct my thoughts and efforts. Later on, Don Bosco sent a great man, Father John Caliero, to Patagonia. When this priest was still a boy at the oratory, Don Bosco received a vision of Patagonian Indians standing around the boy's bed and took it as a sign. If you'd like to hear all about this vision, just click on the link above me here. God bless you, and Our Lady keep you.